Hi guys, Asmo here, and today I wanted to share with you my fast BAMA Scion. This is basically my take on how you could make a BAMA character fast. I wanted to play BAMA for a while, I wanted to try the build, but every single build that I saw, whenever I saw gameplay, it looked a little bit too slow to my liking. BAMA cannot use things like shield charge, it's basically limited to just blink arrow as a mobility skill. You can also use frost blink, but typically that doesn't give you as much mobility as something like a shield charge or a fast leap slam with a lot of attack speed. So I wanted to make a version of BAMA that is going to be focused on movement speed and also quality of life. There is a lot of really cool tech in this build that I'm using that I want to share with you. That's why I want to share this build with you, even though it's not like a very powerful version of the build. I think the Necromancer version, for example, like the Voltaxic Necromancer version, is a stronger build. However, this is a faster and more comfortable way to play it, and I think a lot of solutions from this build and the character that I created can be incorporated into other builds. There's a lot of really cool tech, a lot of cool solutions to different problems like the mana cost and so on that I think are really elegant in this, so that's what I wanted to share with you. In the background you're seeing footage from just Alkengo T16 map with my character that is not fully optimized. There's a lot that can be done to make this character faster and more tanky and do more damage, but I'm going to go over mainly the POB so that I can show you how I would build this character if I wanted to invest even more into it. So the main premise and the main thing that I started with is to make it as a Scion. As a Scion, we can take advantage of a few very cool things that give us movement speed. First of all, we can take advantage of the passive skill tree split that BAMA kind of suffers from. BAMA wants to be somewhere in this bottom right corner because you want bow mastery for the cooldown recovery rate for blink arrow and mirror arrow, and possibly here for the cooldown recovery rate for movement skills, unless you're using for example implicit on boots for that. So you really want to be in the bottom side of the tree a little bit, but then also you want to be in the top left side of the tree because you want the minion duration nodes, you want the other minion nodes, aura nodes, accuracy nodes, and so on. And also you want some ways to reduce your mana cost. So Scion gives you an elegant solution to that because you can start on the right side here, and then you can also pick Necromancer as your extra Ascendancy and start from the starting point of the Witch, which saves you a bunch of points by simply having to path like through 4 points instead of having path like 7 points or something here. So that's very nice. The Necromancer Ascendancy also gives me more movement speed because offerings that are affecting me give me movement speed as well. I get like over 20% movement speed from Flesh offering, and we are automating it, so I'm constantly giving myself attack speed and movement speed buff, which is amazing. This is also of course giving us bonuses to our minions, to attack speed of our minions, and so on. So this is great. The extra AoE gives us some clear, and we can also use conk effect and not lose too much AoE for that. So that is also very nice. The second Ascendancy that we pick from the Scion is the Raider. This gives me easier spell suppression, movement speed, which I want, Onslaught on full frenzy charges, which there are multiple ways of achieving that very easily, and then also permanent phasing, which is very important on BAMA. I feel like playing BAMA without phasing would be very annoying. Any skill that is delayed damage delivery, such as you need to shoot a skill, like with BAMA you need to shoot it, it needs to land, and then the minion has to shoot, and then it has to kill something for you to be able to pass, right? If you're playing like a Trapper, Totem build, Minion build, phasing is more important than if you're playing something that directly hits, right? So that's why this is very useful. Huge quality of life, also gives us a lot of dexterity so that we are able to meet our requirements. In terms of the tree, there is a lot of really cool solutions, so let me talk first about that. The top left part of the tree is very standard. We are picking up a jewel socket here. I have like life, evasion, minion life, minion damage if you use minion skill recently, just very basic stuff. And then we're using minion recovery, minions recover life on minion death. This works with BAMA basically being overridden by you shooting more of them. And then we have increased effect of offerings, spiritual command, aura staff, we got redemption, and then we're pathing down here for the righteous decree, which gives us reduced mana cost of skills, and then the grave pact, which gives us the accuracy, double damage, and I have the mastery here for minions penetrating elemental resistances. Speaking speaking of the mana cost, this is something that I really want to explain, because this is something that I haven't solved on my character, but in the POB I have solved that, right? So on my character, personally, I still am relying on, I still am not running one of the auras that I could be running, but here this is already solved, so I'm gonna tell you, and that's basically because of the anoint, because I don't have the right corrupted amulet. But here's how we are lowering the mana cost to be able to sustain basically spamming 2 6-linked skills over and over. So we are running the Righteous Decree here. We are anointing the Dreamer, which gives us 10% reduced mana cost of skills. And then we are running Militant Faith. Militant Faith has modifiers that can give you 1% reduced mana cost of skills per 10 devotion. And it can also give you, and we have, I think, 90 devotion, so that's 9% reduced mana cost of skills. And then we also have minions have +2 accuracy rating per devotion, which is also very important, because if I didn't have this, you would notice that right now, by picking extra accuracy here, I don't get any minion damage, but if I took this node out, suddenly you see the accuracy gives me more damage, right? Because my minions are lacking accuracy. So this is giving us two things at the same time. And also this jewel is usually very cheap. The mana cost and minion accuracy, typically the minion accuracy, people think it's a useless mod, but for this build, it's actually very, very nice, because you don't need to invest in the minion accuracy anywhere else. And it gives us really nice amount of reduced mana cost. So that's how we are reducing mana cost here. And then we're also using Watcher's Eye with -2 total mana cost while affected by Clarity. The Clarity is adding to our socket pressure, which I'm going to talk about in a moment. And there's also a very interesting bug that I encountered that I'm going to explain. But yeah, this is another way we are reducing our mana cost. And then we're also crafting -2 mana cost on a ring. So -8 because of the catalyst to the mana cost of non-channeling skills. And that's basically it. So that's how we're reducing our mana cost. So if you look at Blink Arrow of Bombarding Clones, the mana cost here is 24, which is 22 per second, and we're recovering 34 per second. So we can spam that. And then Mirror Arrow of Prismatic Clones, also same thing. We can also spam that because they also have a cooldown, which you have to account for. But we are able to basically sustain our mana cost without having to use something like an Enduring Mana Flask, which I am using right now. So let's continue with the tree so that I can explain that. So that's why we're using this Militant Faith. If you are going to use this Militant Faith, I definitely recommend copying the number from the trade website, pasting it in POB, and checking if it's not breaking any of these nodes, because it might possibly change any of these nodes. These nodes can give you something like elemental ailment immunity while on consecrated ground, which like on some builds it can be very, very powerful, but on these builds we're not taking advantage of that. So you definitely want a number of the Militant Faith that doesn't break any of these notables, because they're very useful. The extra evasion and spell suppression, the extra life, and the extra movement speed and attack speed are very valuable. And also we're able to take advantage of some extra movement speed here, since we're stacking a bunch of movement speed. And speaking of that, we're picking up tattoos with movement speed, because I'm pathing through a lot of decks, and this is basically how I path during the leveling. We're picking up a lot of movement speed tattoos to further increase it. While leveling, I simply went through here, through Harrier, and I went to pick up the Bow Mastery here. This Bow Mastery is nice because it's only 3 points, and it also gives us skill effect duration, which helps with the Blink Arrow and Mirror Arrow uptime, and also helps with other things that we're doing for buffing ourselves. And then I pathed all the way here to the movement speed and recovery, cooldown recovery of movement skills, which applies to Blink Arrow, Mirror Arrow, which is very, very nice. And then I pathed for the Onslaught effect. Another thing really cool that we're doing that is a very nice tech is we're using lead by example. So this is best found on a Megalomaniac. You can find Megalomaniacs with, I think there's probably like 20 different notables that would be really good for this build. All of the minion related notables, lots of aura related notables, lots of random good defensive ones that have life or like spell suppression just to avoid ailments, things like that. So I would just basically go through all of the list of all of the notables and just make like a search for like lead by example with at least one other good notable. The lead by example makes it so that whenever I Warcry, my nearby allies and me gain Onslaught for 4 seconds. So not only I can have Onslaught for from the Frenzy charges that I can either get from Carnage Chieftains. If you have 2 Carnage Chieftains, you can get up to 3 Frenzy charges. Or you can also use a Mana Forge setup with Frenzy, or you can self-cast Frenzy as well to keep them up. But you also can get Onslaught from the lead by example with the Warcry. And the Warcry is something that we can easily automate. So the way I'm doing this right now is by simply using Call to Arms with a Rallying Cry. And that is just spamming my Warcry. And I have currently 6.3 second cooldown. 4 seconds out of that are the Onslaught. So it's what is like about 80% of the time we have the Onslaught up or something like that. So most of the time we have Onslaught, sometimes we don't, but we also have Onslaught coming from the Frenzy charges. This can be further reduced if I level this. I just need to get more strength on the gear. But here is a cool thing. There is currently a bug, so you currently cannot do this, and I posted this on the forums, on the bug report forum, but mechanical belts with the sockets are supposed to be able to use Call to Arms. So you can roll an Elder belt with the Rallying Cry skill, and you are supposed to be able to use Call to Arms with it. However, this is currently bugged. You can see that right now, if I press Call to Arms, where is Call to Arms? This is Rallying Cry, this is Call to Arms. If I press Call to Arms, nothing happens. I'm pressing it, I'm spamming it, nothing is happening. However, and you see like it's not being supported, and you think, wait, maybe it doesn't support it, right? Maybe it's actually not supposed to work. It is supposed to work because nowhere on this gem it says that it supports skill gems. If something says it supports skill gems, such as this, right? If you see the Enlighten, it says supports any skill gem. So that means it's not going to support a skill coming from an item. But if it says directly supports a skill, so for example, supported skills, supported Warcry, not a gem, it doesn't say anywhere about a gem, it should work, but it is currently bugged. And you can see that if I change this belt to green and I put something like Second Wind, now we can see that Second Wind actually does work. So support gems can affect the skills coming from items, right? It's just that this one, since it's a new one, they just didn't test it, which is very funny because this is literally the reason to make this belt in the first place, to introduce this solution, and the only thing that this belt is pretty much made for doesn't work. Very funny, but it's just a bug, and I hope they fix it. So that's gonna free 2 sockets for our build, which is gonna be huge, and you're gonna be able to put like cast when damage taken Immortal Call or something like that, right? So that is very, very big. So that's one tech that we are using for the Onslaught. There is more tech in this build, okay? So here's another tech that you can use on BAMA. You can use this on any BAMA build, right? You can use, also, by the way, about Rallying Cry. Why are we using Rallying Cry? Because it gives me huge amount of damage. So Rallying Cry basically like double dips on our weapon. We have the Rallying Cry here. If you look at the damage that I'm getting from it on this build, we got 20 million DPS. If I take it off, the Rallying Cry, wait, I have to I have the other Rallying Cry here from here, right? Rallying Cry. If I disable this, how do we disable this? Okay, we go to 70, right? So we lose 3 million damage. So this is what is it, like 30, that's 15% damage, something like that. So that's about 15% extra damage that we're getting, which is a huge amount because it simply gets a portion of your weapon damage and adds it to the base damage of your minions. And your minions are already using the bow, right? So because you can get crazy, really cheap bows, like really cheap elemental bows with a ton of flat elemental damage right now, because of the Necropolis crafting mechanic, you can get huge amount of flat, and then you're also getting extra flat for using the Warcry, and the Warcry also gives you Onslaught to you and your minions, and you don't even have to use anything because you can simply automate it, right? So it's huge amount of damage, huge amount of like extra movement speed, extra attack speed, and attack speed for your minions because they don't move. So that is a very, very nice. Another tech we're using is Mana Forge arrows with Ensnaring Arrow. You can manually cast it. You can cast Frenzy, you can cast Ensnaring Arrow, whatever you like. But Ensnaring Arrow gives you 20% increased damage. So basically by hitting an enemy, if you're fighting like a map boss, if you're fighting an essence, if you shoot an Ensnaring Arrow and hit it, you're gonna get 20% increased damage taken on them, which is gonna also, it's also gonna slow them, right? So it's also gonna be kind of acting a little bit like a chill. The monster is gonna have harder time chasing you. So this is very, very useful. And with Mana Forge arrows, this is completely automated. Now let's talk about the next automation that we have here. Let me turn off this so she doesn't scream so much. Next automation I have is the Ascendancy mark. So this is a tech that is adding huge amount of QoL to this build. We are automating Desecrate with Flesh Offering. We're automating Sniper's Mark and Elemental Weakness because we were using 2 curses. The extra curse would normally come from a corruption. So on the Pericle's Toe, you should have a Corruption for extra curse. I think currently that's a pretty expensive amulet. I saw them selling for a lot of divines earlier, but it's a very cheap amulet that you can run temples, corrupt, and actually make profit on getting that, getting the good corruptions or getting one for yourself. Until you have that, you can run an anointment, and then after you get that anoint, you would get the Dreamer anoint instead, right? But so that's where the extra curse comes from. So we get Elemental Weakness and Sniper's Mark, which help us a lot, a huge amount of damage from both of them. And then the Flesh Offering Desecrate works really, really well because you can simply cast Mirror Arrow first in the direction you're going, right? So I cast this and it casts Desecrate, and then I cast Blink Arrow and it automatically consumes it, right? And then I'm gonna cast Curse, cast another Curse, Desecrate, and I'm just moving through it like Mirror Arrow, Blink Arrow, Mirror Arrow, Blink Arrow, and it automatically consumes it. So you always have it up. You literally always have it up. You can just spam your skills however you like, and it's always gonna go off and automatically cast a Desecrate and Flesh Offering. It's gonna give a huge amount of damage to your minions, and it's gonna give you movement speed as well. It's about like 20-something% movement speed because we have increased effect of Flesh Offerings as well. So that's another tech we have. Next tech we have is because we are not playing a Necromancer, so we have less survivability for our minions. If you want to use Spectres, if you want to use Animate Guardian, if you want to use Zombies for a meat shield, you could do multiple things. One, you can move the 6 link, you can consolidate both of the 6 links. You're gonna lose a little bit of the damage, but you're gonna gain the extra minions. You can basically remove one of the supports. Let's say you remove like Conk Effect or something, and then instead of that, you put the other part of BAMA, right? So Blink Arrow, Mirror Arrow together in one 6 link would free an entire 6 link where you can have extra minions. But you can also use something like the Hungry Loop. The Hungry Loop can be supported with things like Feeding Frenzy, Meat Shield, Elemental Army, and Minion Life, for example. The Meat Shield and Minion Life are going to be the maximum defense that you can get for your minions. Feeding Frenzy is going to trigger the Feeding Frenzy buff for your BAMA, and then Elemental Army is going to give you extra exposure. You can also do other things for exposure, such as I have in this POB, Starlight Chalice. It's going to give you exposure to all of the elements if you use that flask, for example, on bosses, and that is something that you can do to get all of your minions damage increased, right? Because your minions are going to be doing cold, lightning, and fire, so this will help for all of those. So there's a lot of cool tech here. If I was to make this character a little bit better with better investment, let me go through the POB quickly. So you definitely are looking for like high LE bow, you're looking for high LE quiver. On a quiver you could have things like, for example, chance to gain frenzy charge on crit, and if you're gonna be scaling crit, if you have like a crit chance, for example, on your bow, then your minions are going to be critting more often, and they're gonna be actually generating frenzy charges for themselves through that. Ascendancy Mark, I think this is adding so much quality of life because my build is simply just pressing 2 buttons. I don't do anything else. I'm just pressing BAMA. I'm just pressing Mirror Arrow, Blink Arrow, Mirror Arrow, Blink Arrow. That's all I do, and I just run at the lightning speed, and that's why I made this build, to make it like super comfy, right? Version of it. But so basically you want damage on these two because that's your majority of the damage for your minions. Ascendancy Mark, for body armor, you can do things like physical damage reduction, Fizz taken as fire on a rare armor. You can have life and resistances on it, and on the implicit, you'd like things like haste aura effect, and also increased effect of your offerings. That's of course going to be maximum speed that you can get. You can also use different chest pieces. You can use Bronze Leaf or Bronze Life, whatever it's called, the one that gives you +5 levels to movement skills, and you can put Blink Arrow in there, and it's going to get +5 levels, and it's also going to give you a little bit of damage. It's going to give you a little bit of movement speed. I try to go also with Queen of the Forest. This is just like a very cheap setup. If you have Queen of the Forest, 3-step assault, and then you can use things like, for example, Ascent from the Flesh, and I thought that maybe I can use Devotos and things like that just to make it maximum speed. So that's something you can also do. But I think the rare armor eventually will be the best one. It would outperform the other ones, especially in terms of the amount of defense it gives you, because this character doesn't have much in terms of defense. It has capped spell suppression, has a bunch of evasion, a little bit of ward, and then that's basically it, right? There's not that much defense on this character. For gloves, you would like essence crafted gloves with minions deal increased damage. So you could get like a fractured base with fractured res or fractured strength, and then you would spam the minion essences until you get another good suffix, and then you can finish with eldritch crafting as well for life. You can do many different ways this craft, but I think probably like exalting and annulling with the Eldritch currency, and then re-rolling. Or you could also get like Fractured Life. Actually, maybe Fractured Life would be even better. If you get like Fractured Life and then finished suffixes after, that would be probably easier. I think we're gonna go on D&D so that we don't trade right now. Yeah, but basically gloves, I think Fractured Life and then Minion Essence, and then as good suffixes as you can get, ideally the Strength. And then for the implicits, you want Minion Damage and Suppression, which is going to cap your Suppression. We're spamming a lot of tattoos for the movement speed. If you remove a lot of these tattoos, then you're going to get a lot more Suppression from the Mage Bane, because you're going to get a lot more Dexterity. But since I'm capped without it, just with this 1 point here, then I think it's worth running these movement speed tattoos. What else we're running in this boots? Very, very standard boots for ailment avoidance. This is something that you can craft and it's going to serve you for many different builds actually. You just get fractured suffix on it, like fractured 2-1 resistance or fractured movement speed, and then you get a chance to avoid elemental ailments essence. You spam that essence until you get good suffixes, and then you can use veiled orbs. You can use like suffixes cannot be changed and reforged life, for example, to get the life. So there are many different ways of crafting this. You can use Eldritch currencies as well. And then for the implicits, you want chance to avoid elemental ailments, because these two together with the 20% from here, together with the 20% from here, would give you 100% chance to avoid elemental ailments, which is another hugely important, like a basic requirement for defense for a character, I think, even in softcore. And then the other implicit on the boots would be the increased effect of Flesh Offering for more movement speed, attack speed, damage. Perkle's Toe for the movement speed and extra damage. This gives me 45% extra damage, huge amount of damage for the BAMA. Very, very good amulet for that purpose. Extra movement speed, which fits what we're trying to do, move really, really fast. And then the extra Curse Corruption would be very, very powerful, allow you to do huge amounts of damage. Hungry Loop, the exact links are in this listed as well. For a ring, you'd like to basically fix your resistances and mana and get extra strength. The extra strength basically allows me to use the Call to Arms, Rallying Cry at max levels. That's the main thing. And also we could use Anger. This actually doesn't require that much strength. I think the Call to Arms is the only thing that requires 155 strength. So that'll be the main reason. It'll be helping with the uptime of your Onslaught basically. The Mechanical Belt. The Mechanical Belt would be much more difficult to craft. I think you'd have to spam a lot of essences on this, out of resistance essences, until you basically get the Rallying Cry. You'd have to use things like Annuls and Exalts as well to finish it. That would be one of the more difficult crafts. It would cost you a bunch of currency to make a belt this good, but to start with, you would rely on jewels to fix your resistances a little bit, and you would simply run a little bit worse belt with worse stats. But I would highly recommend like resistance modifiers and rolling resistance essence to get as much resistances as possible. And even if you don't get life on it, just craft the extra res to get your resistances capped and make sure that you get the Rallying Cry on it, right? And hopefully the bag will be fixed and we'll be able to use this. And for Flask, just Quicksilver, Jade Granite, just with movement speed, evasion, armor, just for some basic defenses while mapping. Starlight Chalice, Watcher's Eye. I would recommend things like the non-channeling skills. You can get suppression on it, you can get movement speed with Grace. Phasing doesn't do anything for us because we have perma-phasing, but the -2 mana cost by itself is the thing that I would highly recommend. And then also some kind of a Megalomania with lead by example, that would be very, very useful. And then the Melted Phase that I talked about. And that's basically the build. And it's very, very fast. It's very, very fun. And if someone wants to play a little bit of a different way of using BAMA, this would be good for things like, boss rushing, any kind of like basic Atlas strategies. This would be good for, as you can see, but it wouldn't be something that I would recommend for like T17s or Uber bosses, or like simulacrums. This is definitely not that type of a build because it would lack the defense for it, right? So this build sacrifices the defense, but it has a decent amount of damage and it has huge amount of speed and it has huge amount of QoL, right? It has quality of life and speed to have a very, very fun time playing with good amount of damage, but very little in terms of the defense, and that would be the drawback of this build. That's it. Hope you learned something. I hope you can find ways of incorporating all these different tech solutions into your builds to make your builds smoother. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.